Welcome to week number 5. Today we are going to discuss about monetary and fiscal policy. Monetary and fiscal policy. So these are the objectives of the lecture: introduction to monetary and fiscal policies, instruments of monetary and fiscal policies, role of the central bank. These days it's very crucial: inflation, GDP, GNP, that is gross national product, and currency devaluation. What is a monetary policy? Monetary policy refers to the use of instruments. Basically, when you say instruments, financial instruments under the control of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka to regulate the availability, cost, and use of monetary money and credit. To regulate the availability of cost and use of money and credit. Monetary policy is defined as policy employing central bank's control of the supply of money as an instrument for achieving the objectives of general economic policy. So you can see the integration or the correlation between monetary policy and the general economic policy in a country. When it comes to monetary policy, certain objectives are there for the monetary policy. Example, full employment. Yesterday I told you the importance of unemployment and underemployment. So today, right, we see in the monetary policy objectives, full employment, price stability, stable prices in the economy, economic growth, and balance of payments, especially when it comes to trade finance and international trade and so on. So instruments of monetary policy, there are certain instruments. I said these are financial instruments: bank rate, interest rate, right? When central bank reduces the interest rate, the demand for credit in the economy will go up. People will take more loans, so the industries will be improved and so on. Investments would be there. But if the central bank increases the interest rate, the demand for credit will come down. As a result, the businesses will be shrunk or probably will not move as usual, or people will follow wait and see policy and economy will not grow so much and so on. Then the cash reserve ratio, which is known as CRR. Now this is basically, I will explain one by one. This is every bank, licensed bank, has to keep a certain percentage as per central bank regulations or the way central bank informs with the central bank. This curtails money supply and also for the banks their ability to make more money or to lend more money. And the third one is the statutory liquidity ratio. And the fourth instrument is the repo rate and reserve repo rate. I'll explain all this and open market operations. We'll take one by one. Bank rate, the rate is also known as the discount rate. In certain countries they say discount rate, in certain countries they say central bank rate. It is the rate at which CBSL lends to the commercial banks and rediscounts their bills. It is the rate at which CBSL lends to commercial bank. So if the central bank lending rate comes down, right, commercial banks will take more loans, or always the entire lending rates in the market will come down and vice versa. If bank rate is increased, then commercial banks also charge higher rates. So when they increase their rates, the demand for credit in the economy, in the society will come down. So this is how central bank will use their monetary instruments, example bank rate, either to create more demand for credit in the market or to curtail. Higher rate of interest will contract credit, as I told you. in the economy, public will take lesser loans because the rate is high. That's why when the rates are high, especially the credit will come down or people will not take more loans because the rates are high. And generally now at the moment it's around 7% or so. It will vary. And these slides were prepared some time back, about 2-3 months back. So that's why I have put the rate as 8%. Second one is the CRR, cash reserve ratio. Is a certain percentage of bank deposits which banks are required to keep with CBSL, Central Bank of Sri Lanka, in the form of reserves or balances. Now recently, when the government was blaming the central bank for hindering or to creating barriers in the economy to move without allowing the economy to move forward after COVID-19 in Sri Lanka, central bank immediately reduced the CRR ratio by 2%. So when they reduced by 2%, 115 billion rupees were pumped into the market, or banks had additional 115 billion rupees. So this is how they use these monetary instruments either to expand the economy or credit or to restrict. Higher the SRR or CRR with the CBSL, lower will be the liquidity and vice versa. So Central Bank of Sri Lanka is empowered to vary depending on the economic conditions, depending on the demand and supply. And if the central bank sees that the banks are giving more and more loans, they can use this from whatever 3% to 15% or so. Most of the time it has been around 8%. Now recently I think it was reduced to 5% or 6%. Then another one is SLR, statutory liquidity ratio. Now it's like this, when it comes to banks, always banks have to keep 7%, 8% with the bank, central bank, as well as banks have to keep some money with them in liquid forms, not only to pay when the customers come to the bank for withdrawals, but also at least 4 to 5% as a precautionary measure. So objective of statutory liquidity ratio is to prevent the commercial banks from liquidating their liquid assets during the time when CRR is raised. The liquidity ratio is determined by the central bank as the percentage of total demand and time liabilities. Example, now generally central bank says, okay, you have to keep 8% in the central bank as the cash reserve requirement. In addition to that, banks should maintain the liquidity ratio of about 12 to 14%. So that means if a bank has 100 billion rupees in deposits, 8 billion will go to central bank for the reserve requirement, and further 12 to 14% billion, right, 12 billion or 14% should be kept with them for liquidity purposes. That means commercial banks will have roughly about 80% to lend. This is how central bank will use their monetary policies to control the economy as well as the commercial banks. It means a certain percentage of deposits to be kept by banks in form of liquid assets. 10%, 20% or whatever should be kept with the bank in liquid assets, example, treasury bills or whatever. When you say liquid assets, the meaning is that the assets that can be immediately converted or transformed into cash form. This is kept by bank itself. The liquid assets here include government securities, as I told you, treasury bills, and other securities notified by central bank, which can be immediately converted into cash. If SLR is more, then the banks have to keep more part of their deposits in specified securities, and banks will have less surplus funds. And if it is less, then banks will have more liquid funds, surplus funds to lend. So this is how they manipulate, or they control, not manipulate, they control the system. The current SLR is around, again, 8%. Monetary policy. Repo rate and reserve repo rate. It's another instrument. Repo rate is the rate at which central bank lends to commercial bank generally against government securities. Now, if banks buy treasury bills and the rate at which central bank pays for those treasury bills to commercial banks is known as the repo rate. Reduction in repo rate helps the commercial banks to get money at a cheaper rate. An increase in repo rate discourages commercial bank to get money as the rate increases and becomes expensive. So these things will vary depending on the economic circumstances and the atmosphere. As the rates are high, the availability of credit and demand decreases, resulting a decrease in inflation. Right? As the rates are high, the availability of credit and demand decreases. So when the rates go up, right, the demand for credit will come down. As a result, inflation can be tamed. Inflation can be reduced. And if the inflation is very low, or if the supply is discouraged or economic activities are not taking, then they will reduce the rates, and then the demand for credit will go up, and as a result, economy will get the required credit lines. This increases the repo rate, and reverse repo rate is a symbol of tightening the policy, right, of the policy. So these are some of the aspects. You can go to web and see most of the things in web, but in the same time, I must tell you that in certain countries, certain systems will have certain jargons or terminology, so understand them properly. Open market operations are, it means that the bank controls the flow of credit through the sale and purchase of securities in the open market. When securities are purchased, the central bank makes payment to commercial banks and public. So the public and commercial banks will have more money. It's like this. In the economy, if the inflation is high, that means people will have more money in their wallets. So they can demand goods. And when the demand goes up, inflation also goes up. So then central bank intervenes, and they will issue treasury bills or government securities to the central bank and the public, and absorb the excess money into central bank. So earlier, if you had 10,000 rupees in your wallet where you were demanding certain things, due to issue of treasury bills and government securities, you would have roughly about now 6,000 rupees in your wallet. So your purchasing power has come down, and the demand will also accordingly come down. Then the inflation can be controlled or curtailed or tamed. So this is how they use monetary policies, through the cash reserve requirements or liquidity ratio requirements, repo rates, or the open market operations. These are so common in each and every country basically. When it comes to fiscal policy, it refers to a policy concerning the use of state treasury or the government finances to achieve the macroeconomic goals. Concerning the use of state treasury, because treasury department in any government is one of the key, right? So how does the government finance or spend their funds? Or government policy on changing its taxation and public expenditure programs intended to achieve its objectives. The way they redesign or design the taxation policy, public expenditure, and so on. Or government uses its expenditure and revenue programs to produce desirable results, effects, right, on national income, production, and employment. As an example, if the government spending is there, government, that means government will release money for various projects, construction field, and then they will get money and they will settle the banks. And banks, so like that, it will go on, and there's a circular effect in the market. So as an example, a simple example for you to understand, especially for those who have not done economics. Now, when a company pays the salary for you, it's an income for you. But when you go to the supermarket and spend it, right? So money goes out from your wallet, but it becomes an income for the supermarket. So then when supermarket buys goods, so like that, it goes on like a circle, right? So one person's expenses would become an income of the other person. So objectives of fiscal policy. Now, Sri Lanka didn't have a proper fiscal policy, if I remember right, up until 2017. But now we have a fiscal policy. The objectives are to achieve equal distribution of wealth. But the question is, I said, this is not economics. This is how do you use economics to make business decisions, right? So the question or the argument that we can develop is that, okay, is there any equal distribution of wealth? So do we achieve the objectives of the fiscal policy? Second one is increase in savings. When the cost of living goes up or when the income comes down, savings will be a problem. Now, most of the companies these days have done away with their allowances due to COVID. And just now I got to know in Qatar that some of the companies have reduced their allowances or salaries by 30%. So then savings would become a problem, right? Income comes down and you have only a limited amount to spend. Your purchasing power will come down and it would create a major hit on savings. But as a nation, when the savings come down, it would reduce investments and various other things as well. Low and manageable degree of inflation. Generally, if it is a single digit inflation, all right, and if it is less than 6%, much better. Now at the moment, as at yesterday in Sri Lanka, it was 5.2% inflation, and to achieve economic stability. So these are some of the objectives of the fiscal policy. And the fiscal policy instruments are deficit policy, public expenditure, taxation policy, and public debt. We'll take one by one. Deficit policy is deficit financing, refers to financing the budgetary deficit. Now, as at 2018, if I remember right, the deficit was about 5.2%. That means roughly about 820 billion rupees deficit. So the way you finance or the way you bridge that budget gap will have an impact over our economy. So budgetary deficit means excess of the government expenditure, obviously, against the government income. Central bank gives loans by issuing new currency notes. Increase in money supply leads to fall in value money. When you keep on printing money and release them to the market, the value of your currency will come down. Money value will come down, which is bad from the economic terms. Fall in value of money in turn leads to increase in price level. That would lead to increase in price level. So deficit financing should be kept low as it leads to price rise in the economy. Thus, due to deficit financing, necessary funds are made available for economic growth, and on the other, inflation of country increases. So these are all these measures you have to think very carefully. That's why, like, you have to, sometimes when you take one action, it has so many negative impacts on other areas. So you have to be very, very careful. And reducing the budget deficit, reduction in government expenditure. You have to, because if the budget deficit is a result of having more expenses than the income. It's like this: if you are getting a salary of 100,000, if your expenses are 140,000, you have a deficit of 40,000. How are you going to finance that? That has an impact. If you borrow that from your mother or father, parents, all right, but if you are taking a loan for that, you have to pay interest and then you have to pay monthly. That would further erode your monthly savings or whatever. So lots of other impacts are there. Increase taxes. If you increase taxes, again your available money to spend will come down. Example, if they increase pay tax, your net salary, take home salary would be small. So then you can't save. So all these repercussions are there. If savings are low, investments will be low, like that. Borrow from the banking system and foreign aid and loans. But loans also, now we have gone up to about 83% of our GDP. So we can't go beyond this. That's why even recently the president said, we don't want loans, we want investments. So all these things have huge impact over business, companies, corporates, and so on. Then Public expenditure. Public expenditure influences the economic activities of country very much. The way government spends. You can see that if the government doesn't have money, they will not pay the contractors and all other people. That would create a major problem for banking or settling of debt and various other things. So many connected issues are there. Public expenditure may be of two kinds. Example, development, non-development. So government might spend some money for development activities, and then sometimes like grants or social benefit or whatever the societal aspects. But development, that project would itself generate some income for future GDP and various other things. So normally government should spend in development projects, properly evaluated development projects. Public expenditure may be made in many ways. Development of state enterprises, support to private sector like through PPPs, private-public partnerships, development of infrastructure, highways, telecommunications, and so on, and social welfare. Taxation policy. It's another fiscal instrument. Now, all this time, tax policies have been changing rapidly, right? Sometimes every year. That's why this government, as soon as they came to power, they changed that. I hope these tax policies will remain unchanged at least for the next 5 to 8 years. Taxes are the main sources of revenue for the government because pay tax. Now, if you take taxes, you can see next recording we'll be doing about revenue generation. So government earns basically money from taxes, pay tax and corporate taxes, then the customs duty, and then excise duty, liquor and tobacco and all that. So government levies both direct and indirect taxes in Sri Lanka. Direct taxes are those which are directly paid by the assessors to the government. These changes from all the segments of the society the same rate, right? VAT and excise duty, as I told you. The main objectives of tax policy are mobilization of resources to promote savings. So we have to question whether the existing tax policy, does it lead to more savings or will it reduce the savings of the consumer? To generate revenue for the government, yes, you have to strike a balance between all this. That's why I said you have to have so much of thinking, meticulous thinking, to bring equality of income and wealth. Public debt, as I told you, 83% of the public debt. Now, Sri Lankan debt position as at 2018 was something like $74,008 million, basically $74,000 million, which is about 83% of our GDP. It's like this. If you are getting a salary of 100,000, you have to repay loans up to 83%. So you are left with only 17%. On top of that, you have a budget deficit as well. So huge issues. So public debt, that's why we need investments, not loans. If we take more loans, and also another issue is that all the loans taken in 2013, 14, 15, 16, that time dollar was 160 or so. Today it has gone up to about 185. So we have to pay another premium or extra amount due to the depreciation of the rupee, which was not predicted at all about 5 years back. So these are some of the issues. Objectives of the central bank. Now we are coming to central bank, role of central bank. Maintaining economic and price stability, maintaining financial system and stability. Two things, economic and price stability, and maintaining financial system and stability. So economic price stability, you can go through these notes. You have to ensure that the prices are not widely fluctuating and currency value is there, but in Sri Lanka it's fluctuating. 2-3 weeks back it was 190, now it has again come down to 185 and widely fluctuating. Central bank functions briefly, implementing monetary policy and monetary policy tools. Central bank is the advisor, or central bank is the banker to the bankers, advisor, economic advisor to the government and the treasury. So you can see sometimes the economy and the central bank are inseparable. Economy and the central bank go hand in hand. So central bank has to play a vital role, pivotal role in the economy. Exchange rate policy, foreign reserve management. We have to have a good foreign reserve, foreign exchange reserve, not only to repay loans, but also to meet the imports and all that. And now, since we don't have much FDIs and exports are coming down, tourism is not happening. I don't know how we are going to increase our foreign exchange reserves. And macro-prudential surveillance, we have to keep an eye across the world, what's happening, and also ears to the ground to identify certain things. Now, as an example, about 2 years back, America increased their bond rate by 2.25% twice. As a result, Sri Lankan currency depreciated by 7%. We didn't know anything about that. So we didn't have even, we were not monitoring, or we didn't know. As an example, if they were planning to do so, then the American ambassador should have informed us. Sri Lankan ambassador in America should have. This is how you get market intelligence for macro-prudential surveillance, right? Commonly used macro-prudential policy tools. Commonly used macro-prudential policy tools. You can benchmark some of them with developed countries or developing countries or similar countries with Sri Lanka. Provision of settlement facilities and regulation of the payment system. Issue of currency notes and coins. We can't just print money. Banker and financial advisor to the government, as I told you. Banker to the commercial bank and supervision of banks. Now sees finance companies are failing at a rate. ETI, Swarna Mahal, The Finance, and all this. So what is the role played by central bank? Golden key case. So many question marks are there about their role sometimes. Management of the public debt and fiscal agent of the government. Management and custodian of the employees provident fund. Again, there were lots of accusations about 5 years back, investing in non-recommended shares using EPF funds, because EPF funds are owned by the general public, those who have contributed for that, not the central bank. Because there's a huge amount there, it doesn't mean that you can just haphazardly invest, because it has to, they have to generate some more funds with interest. Facilitating financial inclusion and balanced growth and financial intelligence and so on. So these are some of the functions of central bank. So you can think, okay, are we doing the right thing? What is our central bank's role? And are they doing the right thing? And so on. Some arguments can be raised. What is your view about central bank? You can even just write and send it to me briefly. Inflation. Inflation is an increase in the overall level of prices. Overall level of prices. When the demand is going up, if the supply is also not going up accordingly, then due to this increased demand, prices will go up. But inflation is not an increase in the price of a specific good or a service. And deflation is a fall in the overall level of prices. If the prices are coming down, that is called deflation. Now, good example is during the recession in 2009-10, in Australia and New Zealand, prices were coming down. That's why Australian government came forward and said, whoever who is selling a house or buying a house, government will give an allowance of $27,000. That is to increase the prices and also at least to go with the mild inflation, to create some demand in the hardware industry, construction industry, and so on. And if the prices are coming down, deflation, it's harmful to the economy. Types of deflation, types of inflation. Demand pull inflation. This occurs when the economy grows quickly and starts to overheat. right? More than expected, it's growing faster. Aggregate demand will be increasing faster than the aggregate supply. So then demand pull, due to increased demand or growing demand, right, prices go up. So then it leads to inflation. Cost push, this occurs when there is a rise in price of raw material, higher taxes, right? So then the cost will go up because they are paying taxes, and then as a result, it would lead to inflation. Then wage push, when salaries are increased, people will have more money, their purchasing power goes up, they will demand more goods. As a result, inflation will take place and wage push inflation. So different types of inflations are there. Just go through them, and this is the classification of inflation. Walking or moderate inflation 4 to 10%, and creeping inflation is 2 to 3%. Running inflation is 10 to 20%. Galloping inflation is 22,000%. Hyperinflation is over 1,000%. But personally, I feel galloping inflation, the range from 22,000% is huge, right? So I personally feel that there should be another proper definition or demarcation of this terminology. Measuring the price level. Price level can be measured using a price index that measures the cost of a fixed market basket of goods relative to the cost of the same basket in the base year. You take 1 year as the base year, example 2010 as an example. I'm just taking a hypothetical scenario. And then based on that, you take a basket of goods. But this basket of goods will vary from country to country and nature of goods. Example, in Sri Lanka, we might take coconuts as an example. But in other countries, they don't have coconuts. So they might take, so likewise, culturally and also economically, this basket of goods will vary. So you take 1 year as the base year and the prices of a particular basket of goods, and then compare in 2020 against the same basket of goods, taking 2010 as the base year. And then you calculate and you see the difference and calculate the inflation. So basically, we use Consumer Price Index, CPI, but there are other ways to calculate as well. This is how you do price of the market basket on top divided by price of the market basket of the base year. 2020 price of the market basket on top and divided by the base year market basket into 100, and then you calculate the inflation. Adverse effects on inflation. It reduces the power of your money to make purchases because the money value comes down. That's why as a strategist, I always say, when you are presenting your financial accounts, if the inflation in a country is about 6%, if your company has recorded a growth rate of 10% financially year on year, your net actual growth is only 4%. But in accounting terms, audit firms, they don't use this, right? But this real situation should be taken. I hope in time to come, they will change accordingly with the evolving world. It causes people on fixed incomes to experience a fall in their real income because real income will come down due to inflation. So, but their salaries don't go up. It causes money tied up in savings to lose real value. And the fourth one, it makes our exports less competitive because the cost is high, inflation is high. So in the global market, our exporters would be less competitive comparatively because cheaper imports rather than paying rising prices. Causes of inflation. When the demand for goods and services outstrips the economy, outperforms the economy's capacity to produce them, right? Example, excess demand over supply. Then demand will pull up prices. Example, good example is the demand for coconut oil during the new year because coconuts are practically used for 3 purposes. One is to have coconut for day-to-day work, for your kitchen and all that, for cooking. Second one is to meet the demand in the export market, desiccated coconut, and the third one is to make coconut oil. Now it's more actually because some companies even make virgin coconut oil and all that. So demand is very high. So when the demand goes up, right, it leads to increase in price and then subsequently inflation as well. Excess demand over supply can raise rising general income levels. Increase in the cost of factor inputs, example, raw material, wage, we discuss all these things. So these are the causes of inflation. Strategies to control inflation. Dampen down the level of demand. You reduce the demand. As we discussed, then central bank will see that, okay, more money in the market, probably they might absorb some of these things, so the purchasing power will come down. As a result, demand will come down. As a result, inflation will be controlled. These are some of the mechanisms. Encourage or increase capacity by encouraging business to expand and new business to set up. Or from the other side, supply can be increased through subsidies or various other things, other mechanisms. And then ensure wage rises are accompanied by productivity agreements. This is why I always say, if there's a salary increase, it has to be linked to KPIs as well as productivity measures. Most of the proposals for salary increases as a board member, I can tell you, carry only the KPIs. They don't carry productivity measurements or indicators. Both should be there and integrated. Keep tight control of the money supply through the reduced lending and so on, then the demand will come down. GDP is the monetary value of all finished goods and services made within a country during a specific period. Within the country during a specific period. Basically within the financial year, 1st of January to 31st of December. So GDP stands for gross domestic product. Examples, what you take for GDP calculation, a pepper grown in Abilipiti and exported to Dubai. These are some of the examples. But at the same time, there are certain services we don't take into consideration. Example, the work that you perform at home or some of the housework performed by your wife, you never pay, and those things will not be taken into. So GDP, always there are gaps when calculating GDP in a country. Expenditure is known as consumption. Total payment for consumer goods and services. Investment, i.e. purchase of new plant, machinery, equipment, and so on. Government spending, which is denoted as G, right? Government also purchases goods, services from firms, and so on. Sometimes excludes these transfer payments as social security, unemployment insurance, and so on. And the net exports, any countries, generally one of the key objectives for any country should be to maximize exports and minimize imports. Then only you can have a good net effect or net balance of trade that would lead to have a good balance of payment to a great extent, right? So X net of exports less imports, but in Sri Lanka it's a negative figure because our imports are huge. So when you take this just go through this model, you can see why is the total income, and the red part indicates all certain other goods and markets, and the other one is factor markets, right? So Y is the total income, C is the consumption, I is the investment, and Y is the formula or the combination of C plus consumption plus investments plus government purchases plus the negative effect of imports and exports. So since we have more imports, X minus M is always a negative figure. Gross national product is slightly different to gross domestic product. Gross national product can be defined as all the final goods and services produced by a nation's citizens and excludes goods and services produced, wages and labor productivity supplied by foreigners in Sri Lanka. So citizens, even those who are working abroad, Sri Lankans, can be taken into GNP, but minus the foreigners who provide services, goods, produce goods and provide services, that should be deducted. So GNP is used to measure income, whereas GDP is used to measure output. So you can see another difference, income and output. So GNP, gross national product, is the GDP plus net factor income from abroad. So net factor is the difference between income earned in foreign countries by Sri Lankans and income earned by the foreign nationals domestically, right? So what are the differences? As I told you, GDP is the sum value of all goods, right? GDP is the output, GNP is the income. In calculating GDP of a particular country, production of foreigners within that country is continued and production of nationals outside the country is not counted. However, for GNP, right, production by foreigners within a particular country is not counted and production by nationals outside that country is counted. So there are differences. If you get a question, you should be in a position to answer. Then currency devaluation. Basically, we devalue the currency if the balance of payment is high or huge and negative. That means if the imports are high and exports are low, and the local currencies, the value of local currency is coming down and all that, and devaluation is a deliberate act. I'll take a simple scenario. Now, prime objective of any devaluation is to maximize the exports and minimize the imports, thereby have a better or improved balance of trade, and then to have a better balance of payment. I'll put it this way. Assume that today the American dollar is just 185 rupees, huge, 185 rupees. But an American living in America wants to buy a Sri Lankan rupee, it's 1/185. So you get a particular amount. And if we devalue the local currency as an example by 30% to achieve the objectives of currency devaluation, and it becomes $1 becomes say 215 rupees, and for us to buy a dollar we have to pay 215 rupees, but an American living in America has to buy 1/215. So our rupee has become cheaper in America compared to earlier situation. Now, based on the fundamentals of economics, when the price comes down, when the currency becomes cheaper, we assume that the demand for that currency or the goods will go up. It goes up. So we assume that as a result, because our rupee has become cheaper, Americans will demand more and more goods from Sri Lanka, so we can export them to America. As a result, our exports will go up. From the other side, earlier Sri Lankans who are importing goods paid only 185 rupees per dollar. Now it has gone up to 215 rupees, so they hesitate because the cost has gone up dramatically, so they will not import. As a result, imports will come down. So here exports are going up. We will have a better position when it comes to exports and imports, and that could lead to have a better balance of payment, and also the rupee will be appreciated. But my dear friends, my question is, does it happen in Sri Lanka? No. Because there's another theory called Marshall-Lerner theory. Marshall-Lerner said if a country wants to reap the maximum benefits of devaluation, that country should import and export elastic goods. That means when the price comes down by 10%, demand should go up by 20-30%, more than proportionate. But Sri Lanka unfortunately exports mainly inelastic goods and also imports inelastic goods or essential items, basically petrol, diesel, rice, dal, sugar, pharmaceuticals, milk powder, and so on. So that's why for a country like Sri Lanka, we cannot achieve the prime objectives of devaluation of currency. So that's known as the Marshall-Lerner condition. So these are some of the things that I would like to include in my recording. So just go through them and we will discuss these things at the discussion session. Thank you very much. All the best.